Somewhere around 800,000 years ago, something walked into a cave in northern Spain and started butchering its own relatives, not burying them, not mourning them, butchering them, the exact same way you'd butcher a deer. And that's not a theory, that's what the bones actually show. This matters because it changes how we think about ourselves. We like to imagine early humans as noble survivors, banding together against the cold and the lions. But the fossil record tells a messier story, one where sometimes the scariest thing in the cave was the guy next to you. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at human history completely differently. Let's get into the evidence. In 1994, archaeologists were digging through a site called Gran Dolina in Spain. It's part of a bigger complex called Atapuerca. They found bones from an ancient human species called Homo antecessor, dated to roughly 800,000 years ago. Here's where it gets interesting. The bones weren't just old, they were cut up, sliced with stone tools in the exact pattern you'd use to strip meat off an animal. And they were mixed in with deer bones, tossed in the same trash pile, processed the same way. In other words, whoever left these bones wasn't treating them like family, they were treating them like food. This sounds simple. It isn't. You can't just look at an old bone and say, yep, cannibalism. Scientists have to rule out 100 other explanations first. So here's what they actually look for. Cut marks in the same spots you'd find on a butchered animal. Marks from smashing bones open to get at the marrow inside, because marrow is basically ancient junk food. And no signs of burial, no ritual treatment, nothing that says we respected this person, just processing. When all three line up, that's not a guess anymore, that's a pattern. You'd think Gran Dolina was a freak case. It wasn't. Move forward a few 100,000 years to Neanderthals, and the evidence shows up again at a cave in France called Moula-Guercy. Archaeologists found Neanderthal bones with the same cut marks, the same smashed open limbs, sitting right next to butchered deer. Same story at a site in Spain called El Cedron. Same story at Krapina in Croatia, though that one's still debated. So this wasn't a one-off horror story, it was a pattern that shows up again and again across different species in different places, separated by hundreds of thousands of years. That's the part that should genuinely creep you out. In theory, you'd assume this only happened during a famine, when there was literally nothing else to eat. And sometimes that's probably exactly what it was. In practice, the evidence is messier. Some sites show signs of conflict, like this was the result of violence between rival groups, and eating the enemy was almost a final insult. Other sites show no signs of a struggle at all, which suggests something colder, just opportunity. A body was there, meat is meat. Honestly, that second option is the one that sticks with me. Not war, not desperation, just utility. Here's the twist you're probably waiting for. Did Homo sapiens, us, ever do this to Neanderthals? We know our species and Neanderthals overlapped in Europe for thousands of years. We know we interbred with them. What we don't have, at least not yet, is a confirmed fossil showing sapiens bones with Neanderthal cut marks, or the other way around. So right now, that part is still an open case file. Every piece of direct evidence we have so far is about a species eating its own kind, not eating a different one. But given how much overlap there was, a lot of researchers think it's only a matter of time before that evidence turns up somewhere. This isn't really a story about monsters, it's a story about pressure.
Strip away enough comfort, enough food, enough safety, and behavior gets brutally simple. Survival stops being about ideals and starts being about calories. And that's the uncomfortable part. This wasn't some broken branch of humanity that went extinct because it was savage. This behavior shows up across multiple species, multiple time periods, multiple continents, which means it wasn't an exception to being human. For a long stretch of our history, it may have just been part of it. So let's go back to where we started. A cave in Spain, 800,000 years ago, bones cut like meat and tossed with the trash. That single discovery cracked open a pattern that repeats across the entire human family tree. Here's the one sentence to remember. Long before we were writing history, we were sometimes each other's last meal. So, here's the question worth sitting with. If the right circumstances came back around, how confident are you that modern humans would actually be any different? If this kind of deep dive into human history is your thing, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of stuff we dig into every week.